Hello everybody and welcome to episode 3 of Brew with Beckett, powered by 92 Degrees. Now today I am joined by two men who, to be quite frank, I am a huge fan of. I'm talking about Jack King and Sam Driver from Cultaholic. Now I know a lot of you might be sat there thinking, what the hell or who the hell are Cultaholic? And it's understandable that if you're not a professional wrestling fan like I am, you may not have heard of them, but let me just explain who these guys are. Cultaholic is an online wrestling website where they talk about wrestling, report on wrestling, they share videos giving their views on wrestling, and just to explain what a big deal these guys are in the world of professional wrestling, their YouTube channel has over 600,000 subscribers, and every video they put out regularly gets over 150,000 people watching it. So people care about their views, people care about their opinions, and they're really entertaining guys to watch. And this hour-long chat or so I had with them was one of my favourite ever. It was incredibly interesting, and I really don't think you have to be a professional wrestling fan to enjoy this one. They talk about a lot of very important stuff, a lot of very interesting stuff, including how they ended up with this crazy profession they're in, what it's like to be thrust into the limelight when you never really expect it, how they deal with online trolls and vicious and quite mean comments sometimes online that people unfortunately post, and they tell some just truly crazy stories about this ridiculous world they work in. As I said, I really enjoyed this episode, and I hope you do too. Before we start though, I have to say a huge thank you as ever to 92 Degrees for powering the podcast. It's been so great the last few weeks with the first few episodes going out to see people using the code BWB20 to get 20% off any of their products and really enjoying the great coffee you're getting at home. If you haven't yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Make sure you head over to www.92degrees.coffee or check them out on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram. Head over to the shop. They've got all you could ever want to satisfy your coffee needs over there. Use the code BWB20 for 20% off and enjoy your coffee at home. A big thank you to 92 Degrees again. A big thank you to Sam and Jack for coming on. And this is Brew with Beckett with Cultaholic. I just thought you should know that we get a little bit excited throughout the podcast. Myself, Jack and Sam are very passionate about our wrestling, and it results in a little bit of bad language peppered throughout the podcast. I hope that's not a problem. Just thought you should know. You do know now. Now I hope you enjoy the show. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Brew with Beckett, powered by 92 Degrees. Now this is the third episode in our series, and obviously we've had two with professional rugby, so the obvious next step was to take it to professional wrestling. I'm joined today by Jack King and Sam Driver from Cultaholic. Hello, gents. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. How are you?
Doing all right.
Yeah, I'm well, thanks, lads. I'm well. Thank you very much for joining me. Now, a lot of people listening might not be huge wrestling fans and might not know what Cultaholic is. So, for people who don't, it's basically, I'll let the lads explain more later on, but it's online wrestling journalism, give their views on wrestling, talk about it, videos about it, and I'm going to pump their tires a little bit here. The boys are a pretty big deal. To put it into, they'll shake their heads what they are. To put it into context, people, their YouTube channel has just over 600,000 subscribers. So a lot of people care about what these lads have to say about wrestling. But before we start and get into it, there's something I've got to break to you lads, that it seems a lot of people don't think us wrestling fans know, because they like to tell us all the time. But wrestling is fake.
Well,
No.
It can't be.
That these guys and girls go into the ring knowing who's going to win before it starts.
That's often aimed as a criticism, isn't it, of wrestling fans? But, you know, it's entertainment. Everyone likes Game of Thrones. Dragons aren't real. That's the classic counterpoint that everyone uses.
Actors go into films with a script knowing what's going to happen. It's no different. Suspend your disbelief. That's what it's about.
It's one of the strange things, isn't it? You say to anyone that you like wrestling, the first thing they say is, you know, it's fake. And you're like, well, I'm a fully grown man. Yes, I'm well aware that this is fake. Like, that's no surprise to me.
One of the things that often wrestling fans find is that when they find out it's fake, when you're a kid and you find out that it's scripted, it becomes more interesting because there's all the stories of how it's put together and what goes on behind the scenes. And it's a whole new dimension that makes it probably more interesting than if it was real, to be honest.
Mate, I absolutely agree.
Like the first time I'd sort of looked into backstage politics and everything, it blew my mind. Like I didn't understand how this whole thing was structured or anything like that. And learning that and learning how it works, I think it's an important part in everybody's relationship with wrestling. as they mature into older wrestling fans, unless they just give up and leave, like a lot of people do, which is a bad thing to do.
Everyone does that at some point.
Everyone dips in that. And if anyone listening to this is wondering what do you mean by backstage politics, hit pause on this. Just go and Google the Montreal Screwjob and come back, because it will blow your mind as to the sort of things that happen behind the scenes in wrestling. But the first thing I want to ask you, gents, is, I'll come to you first, Jack, is how did you become a wrestling fan? Like, do you remember your first memory of watching wrestling, getting it? Because I think most people as kids have some sort of memory of wrestling, but how did it come about for you that you got interested in wrestling and became a fan?
I think it was the time that I became a wrestling fan. So I don't remember specifically how. I just remember suddenly there was an interest in it. And from going back and working out when those matches that I remember were happening, I've worked out that it was in the year 2000 when everyone liked wrestling was the thing in the year 2000. So I'm assuming my mates at school, would have been primary school, everyone was talking about it on the schoolyard and stuff. And I just think that it was the sort of thing that everyone was into. Like little kids would be into cartoons or football. Like, it was just one of those things that kids were also into at the time. But then something must have clicked, because obviously I maintained my interest beyond that, where the industry started to go down and people started falling away. Then eventually, when I was a teenager, fell out of it completely, and then got back into it sort of around the age of like maybe 16, 17, around then. So I don't actually remember how I got into it. I think it was just a case of timing, really.
Because that's my next question. I'll come to you both these after, Sam. Is when did you realize you weren't going to grow out of it? Most people grow out of their fandom of wrestling and they grow up into adult things, and that wrestling isn't for adults. So when did you realize that actually, no, you were going to go into adult life and still have an interest in wrestling and still be watching Raw or SmackDown or whatever it was? When did that realization come?
Is this still for me, this question?
Yeah, this is you. I'm going to go.
Cool, right. Didn't want to step on his toes. I think that I probably realized around the time when you've got to start hiding your interest from your friends, when you get to the ages of like maybe sort of 12, 13, when it starts to become a little bit less acceptable. And then they start, maybe someone will reminisce like, oh, remember The Rock, remember that. And you've got to fight to not correct them whenever they get a detail wrong. And you're like, maybe it's still got its claws in me a little bit here. Yeah. So probably around that sort of age.
Yeah. What about you, Sam? How did you get into it, and when did you realize, this isn't going to be someone I'm going to grow out of?
I was pretty lucky in the way that I think my parents were both kind of into wrestling. My mum was very much into it, and then she would work late Fridays, so my dad would let me stay up till like 10, 11 o'clock because it was cool. But I was quite little, and we had a satellite dish rather than cable, so we'd get a switch over on Cartoon Network at like 9 o'clock on a Friday night, and we'd get that Monday's Nitro repeated. And that was just something I remember from way back, like when I was really little, probably about 6 or 7-ish. But then from there, I think, as Jack was saying, around the year 2000, when everybody was getting into it, that's when my interest really, I guess, blew up with it. But from there, it just kind of, you have that dip, as Jack said. And I think by the time I got to 13, everybody was skating, myself included. And you slowly have to, well, you don't have to, but you slowly kind of feel pressured out of something you enjoy, to the point where maybe the product's not as good as it was. You eventually stop watching. I was lucky enough to have a younger brother who was still actively watching, so I'd kind of know what was going on, and I could kind of stay on top of it without actively watching it, because I was cool in that, and nobody cool watches wrestling. But then I think I fell off big time for quite a while, until I started like actively watching again for my job, really. But I do remember at one point, as Jack was saying, with having to correct people when they were wrong, I had a very, very awkward, he's a wrestling fan moment when I was in uni. And it was in second year. We went back to some flat for like a party, somebody's like apartment. There's about 8 or 9 of us, and we were all just sat around watching TV and flicking through channels, and wrestling was on. And somebody said something and it was wrong. And I just went on this massive long rant about Stone Cold and the Invasion. And by the time I was done, everybody was just looking at me going like, All right, mate.
Yeah.
And my own friends were sort of like, "Oh, this is weird."
Everyone's just staring, just backing away
And
from
I
you
was
in
like,
the room.
"Oh God, I revealed,
Yeah.
my big secret."
It's like accidentally coming out as a wrestling fan. I was like, oh right, I've done it. I've slipped it into the conversation.
Yeah.
There's no going back now. I remember me and my cousins used to all get picked up by my grandma on a Tuesday and go down to her house, and they had Sky and satellite before any of us did. And we used to watch Monday Night Heat and Tuesday Night Velocity or Sunday Night Velocity. Heat and Velocity, whatever nights they're on. That was my first introduction to wrestling. And then I used to go and stay at my grandma and granddad's on a Friday a lot because they used to feed me loads of chocolate essentially, and which hot chocolate and chocolate. And SmackDown,
hot and cold.
Exactly. That was in the mid 2000s, like the SmackDown 6 was just taking, and SmackDown was just, and the SmackDown with the big fist at the top of the stage. And that's my memory of on a Friday night. I go, and my granddad would sit there and they'd come up with a warning that it would have adult themes not suitable for children. And my granddad would look across the room to me and go, Charles, I really don't think you should be watching this. And I go, I'd look at him and he'd go, okay, we won't tell your mum. And that was how I used to watch wrestling. So they're my memories. And then, like you say, you always go through that. Oh, I'm too cool for this now. I'm going to grow out of it. And when I moved to Leicester to join the academy there, freshly, I was like, I cannot let anyone know that I'm a wrestling fan. Like, I will be ridiculed. So I hid it.
Yeah.
Long time there. It was only when I was like 18, so I've been there 2 years. One of the lads, Paolo Dogwood, who's just been picked for England this week. We somehow, everyone was talking about wrestling and reminiscing. So if I could see him across the room, like really like nodding along and knowing things that won't happen, I was like, you like your wrestling? He was like, oh, I like it a little bit. Why? And we looked at each other and I was like, I love it, pal. He was like, yeah, me too. And from that moment on, we used to just have like secret conversations about wrestling together. And in the end, we were like, oh, you know what? Fuck it. We're going to let everyone know we love this. It doesn't matter. And then I think you get to like 18, 19, 20, you come a bit more couple. You're like, oh, I'm just going to let people know because you just got to enjoy it then. But what I want to do next was, and this is genuinely fascinating me because I have no idea. Normally when I have guests on, I have some sort of idea of what the answer I'm going to get. But I genuinely don't know this is. How do you end up doing what you do, boys? Like how you two got here, where I think I have the best job in the world. I'm a professional player. I think it's the best job in the world. If I had to choose a second job, I'd probably choose yours. You get you from the outside. You watch wrestling and talk about it for a living. So I know I first became aware of both you and your work at What Culture. And I'm sure we'll get into that, and then the transition to making your own business and own entity in Cultaholic. But how talk me through both your journeys of how you say you went to uni and what you do at uni, because you don't go to uni and study talking about wrestling. That's not a degree I'm aware of. So how does it happen? Because I'm really interested to know.
I'll let you go first on this one, Jack.
All right. Well, I went to uni and did English literature. English was always like my best subject at school. It was always the one I was most interested in. So it was always, I was always going to take that further. But I didn't really know what, I didn't know whether I wanted to get into journalism or what I wanted to do. And then it was like only my sort of it was like my first proper job after uni. I was working in a Debenhams for a little bit, but it was my first job that was along the lines of the career that I wanted to, pursue. And it just happened to be based in Newcastle. It was What Culture. And they had a wrestling section, which was quite a stroke of luck because it kind of coincided with me getting back into wrestling more deeply in the past couple of years. So they were like, which sections can you write on? And I was like, probably write on a bit of sport, probably wrestling actually. And then they were like, okay, I wrote like a trial article for it. And after a while, I was just moved to just the wrestling section. I just became exclusively a wrestling writer for the site. That's where I met Ross, who also is in Cultaholic. He was doing the same thing. And then I should probably pass over to Sam now because this was before the YouTube channel was really a thing. And then it started to take off. So I'll pass over to Sam now for this part.
So my journey started with leaving uni. I did a film and TV production at uni, which is a degree that it's hit and miss when you get out the back end of that. That's pretty fair to say. In terms of whether you've actually learned anything substantial enough to get you anywhere in the industry. But me and my mate, the job market was terrible, as it usually tends to be for, I know they said wrestling themed jobs, they're like media themed jobs.
That'd be a website I'd want to go on, a wrestling themed job vacancies website. Just that, there'd be some excellent jobs up there.
But yeah, we were like, well, fuck this. Let's start our own company. You know, there was a business scheme through the university where they give us $4,000 a piece through the ERDF, and we'd be able to start a production company. So we did that. We got that off the ground. We got some pretty good clients. It was all going well. Essentially, we were idiots. We didn't really know what we were doing. That all went to absolute shit as expected. And then I wound up in a call center, and then I'm just applying for any creative role I can, and What Culture came up. And it was essentially like, we want to do video stuff. We don't really know where we're going with it. And I was, still fresh out of uni pretty much. Well, a couple of years removed from uni. And I was hungry for it. And I was quite keen to have that challenge. And it just all went from there, I guess. We added presenters slowly, and eventually we got Jack and Ross on the go. But yeah, when I first started, I remember I was voicing some of the videos. I was mainly making things about film and TV and like movie mistakes and things like that, the occasional little sport video. But wrestling, it just sort of happened, and I was given that license to just be a wrestling fan again, which was really weird. It was kind of liberating, where it was like, well, your job's about this now.
Yeah,
you need to know it. And it was like, oh, this is so good.
Because like you say, so as you said, Jack, you went as a writer, and I remember so I'm a huge wrestling fan, huge comic book fan as well. So what culture we're covering at the time, and Sport Fan was kind of like my wet dream almost. I was like, this website's got everything. So I was reading a lot, and then I was down one of those YouTube dark holes you end up down watching the 30 biggest Royal Rumble return pops. We've all been down there at 3 a.m. thinking, I've got a fitness session at 7. What am I doing? Still watching this?
Well, I've been down there thinking I've got. Yeah, I was going to say I've been down there thinking I've got to catch a metro in the morning, but not so much. I've got a fitness session in the morning.
But we've all got things to go up for. But then YouTube will go, well, why don't you watch this? You're like, well, fuck, I've got to watch that now. I can't not watch that. I remember coming across this list. I was like, oh, this is an interest. I can't remember what it is. It was 10 top something. And then I saw it was What Culture, and it seemed to be, I've read some of this stuff. So I went on the YouTube. I think at that point you had maybe like 6 or 7 videos. So I watched them all. At that point, I'd watched them all. And then I kind of just watched this YouTube channel go from something I was like, oh, it's quite cool. I know about this too. The whole internet wrestling community knew about it. And it was, you couldn't look anywhere on the IWC without hearing about What Culture and the guys there. So what was it like on the inside watching that just blow up? Doesn't even do it justice. It just went ridiculous.
It was really
I'll let you go.
I was gonna say it was really like Sam, do you feel this way as well? So the first video that me and Sam appeared on, the first reactions video that we appeared on each other's first reactions video. We first made our on-screen appearance the same reactions video, which was the 2016 Royal Rumble. And from that point, that January of 2016, and then we went to WrestleMania in Dallas in that April. That was that felt like it was ages. That felt like it was, for me, that felt like it was like a year.
That was a year, yeah.
Yeah. Because everything grew and grew and grew. And you'd think that would go like really fast, but actually, because it was also alien to us and so new, I think actually we took everything in really slowly. And then eventually you see like numbers go up on a screen, and you see like your viewer count or whatever. But when we got to Dallas, it was actually quite overwhelming, because whichever city WrestleMania is in that year turns into like the biggest collection of wrestling fans on the planet at that time. And we were getting recognized like left, right, and center. And we'd been recognized maybe twice in Newcastle the previous few months. And then suddenly every street corner like we'd turn onto, it was so crazy. And I've told Sam this before. I remember at the end of the day getting in the shower, and my ears were like, it was like I'd been at a gig. Like it was going like, wow, like, because I just felt a bit overwhelmed by all. I was like, what's going on? This is mad. But, we were there to do a job as well. And it was just kind of a surreal feeling that occasionally comes back. Sometimes something will happen and you'll realize like, wow, does this person know who I am? How's this happened? But generally those first few months were really surreal. That's the only way I can describe it, I think.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Jack was saying there as well, I think we all kind of shared that it wasn't even really a belief. It was just, we didn't really know what that meant, that we were getting that big. It was good because, it was our job. And if the graph's going up, then that means we're doing a good job. But I think when we finally got out to Mania, because Mania is like the only time in the year where you will just see, full blown, like lawyers and judges and police officers and people with all these like respectable jobs where, you know, they're in uniforms pretty much all day or suits. They're just in like a t-shirt, a pair of shorts or a pair of slacks, some Crocs and a wrestling belt. There's just, you can't move for it. And it's just perfectly normal. And I think that alone was really overwhelming because it was like, this is weird. It's like acceptance as a wrestling fan. You can go anywhere and you could too sweet anybody and they would do it back to you. You could,
it's like if wrestling was football.
Something. Yeah, somebody would scream woo in the middle of the street and loads of people would do it. Like it was proper surreal. And then on top of that, it was people going, it's you guys. And we were like, what?
Yeah.
It didn't.
It's crazy.
And it was, like people just trying to talk to us and stuff. And it was like, wait, I don't understand how you even know who we are.
It's like, it's something because you don't find too many wrestling fans like normal life. It's obviously a huge business and there's so much money, but it's not, especially over here, not the most common thing to be a fan of. I feel like you get so excited when you find, like, I put my NWO shirt on just to do this. Like, you get excited
right.
because you're going to talk to other people who like wrestling. I was driving the other day, and I live in Cheltenham. I was driving through Cheltenham and I saw a man running towards me in a Undisputed Era t-shirt. So, like, I had my girlfriend in the car. I rolled down the window and I shouted, "Adam Cole, baby," at him. And my girlfriend looked at me. She was like, what are you doing? And then I just, like, the guy ran past doing like the Undisputed Era size. I was like, this is the best.
Oh, he responded. That's good.
Yeah,
that would have been terrible.
Yeah.
That would have been terrible if he just no.
Yeah, because like, he didn't have headphones on, so he could hear me. And she was like, she's like, you don't know that man. Why is he responding to you? I was like, there's this unwritten bond between wrestling fans of, you like wrestling, I like wrestling, so we're gonna be all right together because we both like this weird thing that people ridicule us for. So actually, there's this shared hardship almost. We get on. But that was what
when you I was gonna say when you encounter another one in the wild, then that's incredible, and you can't not and I fully understand why you did that because you can't not take advantage of the situation.
You've got to.
At least you didn't get the secondhand shame. That's what sometimes happens with it when you're out with like some mates and you like spot somebody in a wrestling shirt, you crack up a conversation or you do something that they deem to be a little bit like, ooh.
They're like, what are they doing?
And they all just look at you like, oh my God, we're sort of tarred with secondhand with the wrestling brush.
Not in front of the boys. Not in front of the boys.
Something I wanted to touch on that you both mentioned was this, suddenly people were recognizing you, especially when you go to Mania, which is the wrestling capital of the world. That city, like you said, you're going to get recognized. Now, you go into playing sports, and if you are successful, a lot more successful than I've been in my career, you get recognized. You accept that's part of it. People are going to know who you are. You apply for a job as a writer or working behind the scenes for what culture? And that's not something that you're expecting to get. And especially with social media now, and people who don't know, the internet wrestling community cannot always be the kindest of places. How do you deal with, first of all, unexpected people recognizing you in a good way, and like they're almost like, oh, these people, and then also the uglier flip side of that, of where people feel they have an opinion about what you do and they can share it, and it doesn't matter how fucking nasty it is they go into. How was that? Because that was never anything you signed up for when you take the job you took. I'm not saying being an athlete or a celebrity or whatever you do, a film star, you do sign up for the abusive side, especially, but you know it's a possibility. You boys never knew that. That wasn't something that crossed your mind. So how is that? That can't have always been easy.
Do you want to go for it, Sam, first?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to manage initially, especially, when you're really new to it all. And then all of a sudden you can tweet, about your breakfast and people are responding. And I think it's like you go from being somebody with very little social presence or very little use of something like that. And then you have to sort of start engaging with people. And I think most of the interactions I've had, in fact, 99.999% of interactions I've had with people have been overwhelmingly nice. Like, because as you said, most wrestling fans just want to chat wrestling. And if they see us and they like us and they know who we are and that our job is talking about wrestling, then often they'll maybe want an opinion or they'll want, just to shoot the shit with you for a little bit. But I don't think I've ever really had a face-to-face overwhelmingly negative experience with anybody. It's kind of more of people will just go out of their way, maybe give you a bit of side eye or something, but they're not gonna come up to you and be like, "You're shit," or at least not in my experience anyway. But then again, I've sort of been behind the scenes for so long. I've not really been out in front as long as somebody like Jack or Ross has. So I don't know if they, especially sort of coming through, because I know the comment section is a brutal
Oh, God.
place.
Unashamedly, I absolutely loved it. Just loved the attention. I thought this is absolutely brilliant. Nothing can go wrong.
It's weird.
I was just like, nothing can go wrong. This is never going to go bad. And then obviously, like in person, I agree with Sam. Almost all of the time, when you get like recognized in person or whatever, the interaction's almost always good. But the comment section can be quite harsh on you, especially when you're new, because they don't like change generally. Yeah. And then, but then they like people who are established. But how do you establish yourself without once being new? Yeah. It's a catch-22 situation. Yeah. But I feel as though the only time I've ever kind of encountered in person any sort of unease or like not sure how I feel about this situation is ironically at some wrestling shows, the sort of cooler ones, because we're like the McDonald's of the online wrestling world. And then there's like I can't even think of a good example. Right, they're more or more into something cooler, something much cooler. And then there's been, as Sam said, there's been some sort of side eye kind of like as if we're a bit corporate. But I will say that has diminished a lot since we set up our own business. Yeah, because I think we've proven that it's not. I think we've proven, and I don't want to sound too big-headed, but I think we've proven that we've succeeded not purely because of the backing of a big company. We can actually write and produce stuff ourselves, if that makes sense.
And
that was a very long-winded answer.
No, it's perfect, mate. And I think something you both touched on there that I'm very passionate about is like in person, it's very, very rare people will have negative conversation with you because they don't like it. But the issue is people can hide behind profiles, they don't even have their photos on YouTube, on social media. And I've got so many issues with that. And you see so much, I do a lot of writing about and involve a lot with women's sport. And you see so much of it in that as well, where it's always men. Always men. We're the worst sometimes, our gender. We really are. Yeah. And they'll just chat shit about it. But you're like, you'd never say this in person. And that's why I think, like you say, you guys never signed up for that. And that's why I was interested to see how you dealt with it. Because I know it can be, when you've got, I was adding up the numbers earlier, when you've got over 150,000 followers across Instagram and Twitter, like the two of you do, between the two of you, people aren't always going to say nice things, unfortunately. Those 150,000 aren't always going to be nice. No.
What else is, I think the key thing that I've realized in the past few years, because in the past, since Cultaholic started, really, I've managed to kind of ignore negative comments a little bit more than I used to be able to. And I think the key thing that I've realized is that if somebody feels it necessary to go online and, say horrible things about a total stranger, it's probably them projecting. It's probably them because something about their life is not ideal. No one's got a perfect life, obviously, but they feel like maybe they've got to get that out somehow. And I just try and think, you know what, maybe their opinion doesn't mean that much because it's coming from a place of anger and it's not a real sort of opinion. If it's constructive criticism, obviously that's good. But when it's just abuse, I think the best way to ignore it is just to remind yourself that it's just one person's opinion and it's probably not coming from the best place. And you're more likely to pay attention to negative comments than 20 positive comments.
That's the thing. And I think part of it as well with us was we were always just really blown away by the support. I think we all sort of try and endeavor as hard as we can to be as nice as possible to whoever we meet, because you never know, like if they are like a huge fan, not that we maybe have any fans like this, but maybe, if there was like a mega huge Jack fan and meeting Jack is the highlight of their entire week, you want that to be something they remember and you want it to be nice. You don't want to be a complete dick to somebody.
Mate, do you remember that guy? Do you remember that guy outside? Do you remember that guy outside Ernest? During the so there's a pub near our office, and it was, when was it? It was during the stage where you could have a group of 6 or less. It was like that part of the not between lockdowns. So it was like the summer, and we were all sat outside this pub. What happened, Sam? Because I was very much the victim in this situation.
So it might have even been earlier than that. I don't know, but I remember we were all sat outside the pub in the sun, and this guy just walked up, and I think he clocked Tom and he clocked me, and he was like, "Love you guys, love your videos, love everything you do. Tom, you're great. Sam, you're great." About faced and walked off, and Jack
walked off.
But Jack was just like, and we were all cackling because it was just ridiculous that he hadn't even seen Jack, who sat like right in front of him. Because obviously he's gonna know who Jack is if he watches the channel. And then it was like, oh, maybe he just hates you. Maybe he absolutely hates you. He did that on purpose. But the weird thing was that months later, I was waiting like at the station for a train, and this guy came barreling up to me, and he was like, "Oh, you met me a long time ago." And I was like, what? And he was like, outside of earnest, the story's being told on the podcast. He's like, I didn't stop Jack deliberately. I feel really bad about it. Can you tell him, please?
Oh, bless
I never took it. I would like to point.
I don't think he took it seriously. And we were all howling, don't worry.
I'd like to point out by this stage that obviously for people listening to this podcast who have no idea about wrestling, they're going to be like, who the hell are these guys? And why are they talking about how they get recognized so much? It's only within a very niche community, so we're not like. Don't worry, we're not pretending that we're like celebrities or anything. It's just in a very niche community.
Sorry, Jack, I couldn't hear you over my Cessna reversing.
The one story I've got sort of a bit like where your ego takes a hit like that, Jack. Where I was, I'd gone to watch. So my sister, who don't know, plays for England. She's far more successful than I am. But I'd gone to watch her. Gone to watch her play in the Premiership down at Saracens. This was a few seasons ago when you could go and watch sport. And I was there and I'd gone to get in the queue for coffee, because of course I had, because coffee keeps me going. It is my life. And I was queuing up, and this guy about two in front of me looked round, and I could see that he recognised me. And I was at Gloucester at the point, and I was like, we've got a Gloucester fan here. So he turned around again, then he looks back again. I'm like, he keeps looking. I was like, come on, say something. I'll give you a picture. Yeah, I'll be a good guy. Then finally he turns around and he goes, he said, sorry mate, are you Charlie Beckett? And I said, yeah, I am actually. He goes, yeah, I thought so. He goes, you're Sarah's brother, aren't you?
Oh.
I was like, yes, I'm Sarah's brother. I was like, that is the day I became Sarah Beckett's brother. All my rugby credentials went out the window. I simply became Sarah Beckett's brother. You touched on it before, Jack, about you boys. You two, Ross and Adam Cheats, took the incredibly brave move to leave What Culture. Is it just over 2 years ago now?
2.5, I'd say.
2.5 years or so.
Oh wait, 3.5. Sorry, 3.5.
So
yeah. Sorry, Sam. I've just undersold us there.
So 3.5 years ago.
It was November 2017, I think.
Yeah. So
it's 3 years and a few months. Why am I clarifying this? It doesn't matter.
Jack, thanks, Jack. Guys, if you want to get your fingers out and count how many months that would be, it's January 2021 now, so you can do the maths at home. Now, I don't want to get into the politics of why you did, because that story's been told a million times, and if anyone is interested, they can go and find out a million things on it on the internet, all that nonsense. What I want to talk about is, first of all, having the balls to do that is incredibly impressive. But I want to talk about, like, how did you weigh up the risk and the challenge of, and was there ever, I'm sure there were, what moments were you like, oh shit, this has not been or a good move, or we've made a mistake here, or this isn't going how we thought? Because we can look back now and laugh about those moments, because as I said at the start, you've got over 600,000 followers on your YouTube page, get 100,000 views every video. It's been a success. But were there moments in the last 3.5 years, however many months that is, Jack, you can work it out later, that you were like, oh shit, did we make the right move here, lads?
Obviously just right at the start, when Adam Blombier, who now works for another YouTube channel, he left. It's a situation you can Google.
Google
but at the same time, that was a moment when we thought we were going to have to maybe pack it all in, and it was a big mistake. At the same time, I don't know if I was ever that. I didn't consider myself very brave for taking the initial step, purely because my parents were really, really like class about it. They were saying basically like, I brought up to them, we're thinking of leaving and setting up our own thing, and they were like, honestly, just go for it then, because they said basically that you're not married, you've not got kids. If it all goes wrong, we'll have you back here. You can come and live with us. And I just thought, well, I'm in a very, very lucky position for my parents to be so supportive. Why not just make the most of it then? So I never consider myself that ballsy for doing it, because I felt very lucky for being in the position to be able to do it. But Sam, so I don't know what were your feelings on it, Sam?
I wouldn't say ballsy. I think it just reached a point where there was an impasse with where we were, and there'd been sentiment brewing, on either side of that coin of whether we jump or whether we stay or whatever, for quite some time for all of us personally. And then eventually the floodgates opened, and we spoke about it, and from that point on, I think we all knew there was a risk involved, but I think we were lucky in the way I was, especially similar to Jack. I had parents who were just like, go for it, because they were able to help me if it all went wrong. But it just sort of felt more like something that had to happen by the time we actually made the jump, and then to hell with the consequences. Like if I'd kind of stayed, I believe that I would have spent the rest of my life going, what if we'd done that? And I think that was something that by the time we'd all agreed that this is what we were going to do, I think we were all there too, where you just you want to prove it to yourself that you can do it.
Sorry to jump in, but at this point I really do want to give a shout out to one of our editors, Richard Tubman, because he was our first employee essentially. He was an editor at What Culture with us, and then when we all left, we knew we wanted to bring him along as well. And the fact that he did that, I think he has way more balls than her. Like that was such a risk. That was such a risk for him, because he's leaving a very secure job to take a chance on these lads who've just walked out of that job, and he did it. And I can't really ever thank him enough for that, because we doubled our editing team immediately, because not immediately, he came along. When did he come along? A few months after we started?
I think it was a couple of months in. Yeah,
it was very crucial, and he's obviously still with us now. And I just feel like when he did that, that's when I gained quite a lot of confidence in what we were doing, because I was like, people actually believe in what we're doing, and people are willing to work with us. And so fair play. Shout out to Richard.
Yes, big thanks to Richard. And it's crazy, isn't it, how you can have all the self-belief you want, but as soon as someone else who you respect in their whatever they do actually goes, yeah, you know what, I do back you in this, it just makes you feel 10 feet tall straight. It's like having a coach in rugby. Be like, no, I do believe in you. Like, yeah, I'm going to play. You are good enough for this. Like, if it's someone you respect, you're like, well, shit, if they believe in me, yeah, but absolutely, this is the right call. So, as I said, I'm so glad you boys did, because you look at the videos you're producing and everything, it's just so good to watch. If anyone is listening who is a wrestling fan and for some reason hasn't watched any of this, so I don't know how you'd be a wrestling fan on the internet and not come across it, do head over to Cultaholic. It is all excellent stuff, and it's a big weekend this weekend. It's the Royal Rumble, which is always exciting. Go on, Jack.
Absolutely. To be fair, there are a lot of people who will say to us, like, they'll just bump into us somewhere, or they'll encounter us online on Twitter or something, be like, oh yeah, what happened with what? They still don't know that we've set up our own thing. So we are still spreading the word, Charlie. It's actually happening.
There's the Kurt Angle at the airport story, isn't it? Where people would come up to him while he was wrestling in TNA going, oh, I remember when he used to be on TV. What happened? Yeah. Retired. And he's like, I've been wrestling for 7 years on a different channel.
just flick over and find me. So I say, so pleased you did create Cultaholic. It's excellent, and more importantly, so happy it's going well. But I want to go back to What Culture, just because you guys at What Culture, I don't know how much you had to do with the decision of this, but I knew you were heavily involved both on and off screen, made the crazy decision to start your own wrestling company while you were there. You started WCPW. Now, I don't need to get into the behind the scenes, but all I want to talk about is, what was it like to be working in actual promotion? So it's one thing to be a fan and watch from the outside, but suddenly you are in this promotion. And just so people listening who don't know this might be like, oh, it would have been very small time wrestlers. There won't be anyone who I'd know. I came to 2 shows with my rugby. That's all I could get to. I made a list earlier of some of the big names who were at the 2 shows I came. I'm going to run through them now, okay? Rey Mysterio, Alberto Del Rio, Kurt Angle, Will Ospreay, Drew McIntyre, Ricochet, Matt Hardy, WWE. They were coming to these shows. They were performing. So what was that like to be involved suddenly with an actual promotion?
It was bewildering. I think in the best and worst way possible at times, it was bewildering because it wasn't really our plan to do that. Obviously, we were working for a company that went, you know what, let's do this. And it was like, okay, yeah. And we just had to, hold on to your asses and let's go. Just grab the seat and make your way through the crazy ride. But I mean, it'll never not be insane that we were involved with shows involving such huge names. Like, think back to some of the sizes of the venues when we got people like Pentagon in a tiny venue in Sheffield that can hold like 110 people. And just the atmosphere at some of the shows was great. I mean, the work was stressful, to put it lightly, but it was an interesting time for sure. I don't think I'd trade it for anything if I was to go back, I'd probably do it all again. But it's it was mental.
It was a massive learning experience as well. Getting to learn how things are put together in a wrestling show and how matches are put together, and you just learn so much being behind the scenes that I think it really helped inform our online content going forward. So it provided a really invaluable learning experience. Also, I reckon it's the most rock and roll me and Sam will ever be, because we were like traveling the country, stopping at service stations. We were living the life,
well,
honestly.
Jack, you were like, Sam was all behind the scenes. You were on screen taking bumps, mate. Like what was that like? Okay, right. But you were physically involved. Yeah, but you were in this ring with professional wrestlers doing physical wrestling at times. Like that again, you don't go to the university. You're doing English literature at university. You're not expected to be in there, being thrown around by wrestlers. How was that? And okay, talk to me about when someone comes up to you and says, "Jack, we've got an idea, mate. We want you to do this."
It's honestly very. So some of them, like my first ever one, when Big Damo, now Killian Dane in WWE, punched me in the face. That was always part of the plan. That was always in the script. So I had time to get nervous for that one terribly. The ones that involved like getting beaten up at maybe smaller shows, or just like a lot of them were ideas on a whim, basically. So the Matt Hardy involvement was just Matt Hardy had an idea on the fly, as Matt Hardy often does, and sent someone backstage to come and get me. It was Kenny McIntosh, actually, from Inside the Ropes, and he was like, "Matt wants to do a spot with you." And I was like, oh my God, what? But like in a similar way to how Sam was talking about his attitude when we left What Culture and set up Cultaholic, I did think, well, if I say no, I'm going to just wish that I did this for like the rest of my life. So.
You can't
exactly.
Imagine if we sat in this conversation now and you were telling me you said no to a spot with Matt Hardy. Can you imagine what my reaction would be? I think it's actually, you brought up Kenny. I think it's Kenny's birthday today. I saw on Twitter. This isn't going to go out for ages, but happy birthday to Kenny.
Absolutely.
Happy birthday, Kenny.
3 weeks time, Kenny. You'll get that 3 weeks late, Kenny, if you listen. I doubt you will. You're too busy being incredibly successful with Inside the Ropes. But apart from that, if you do listen, there you go.
You're listening to the Brew with Beckett podcast, powered by 92 Degrees. Now, powered by 92 Degrees isn't just some snazzy catchphrase the guys at 92 came up with. They genuinely live it, and I want to take this moment to thank them for all the support they've given us. This podcast is quite literally powered by them, and without their support would never have happened. Now, as well as the support they give the podcast, I myself am personally powered by 92 Degrees in the shape of the caffeine in their coffee. Every day I start my day with a 92 Degrees coffee. And if you want to be powered by 92 Degrees like I am, make sure you head over to their Instagram at 92degrees.coffee, their Twitter at 92degrees_, or their website www.92degrees.coffee, because over there they've got your beans, your subscriptions, your keep cups, independent coffee guides, your AeroPresses, and anything else any of you coffee lovers could need to get you through your day. When you're there, make sure you use the code BWB20 to get 20% off whatever you buy. That's BWB20 for 20% off. We're powered by 92 Degrees, and you can be too.
So Jack said there about taking spots with Matt Hardy. What was your biggest like pinch yourself moments? I've been involved with these wrestlers. Like these are huge names. Was there any moments you like, Jesus Christ, I can't believe I'm doing this?
I particularly the Japanese World Cup show. We had a World Cup tournament that spanned months, and it was an absolute ball ache to produce and get everything planned. And I do not envy the people that had to deal with the bulk of those booking meetings and arranging flights and hotels and just all that nonsense. But doing the Japanese show was huge because I think we were just sat on top of some of the greatest talent, in the world. We had Jushin Thunder Liger, and I was like, we're sat there working out, oh, well, what we're going to do. This has to move around. This has to go there. And we were all talking, and then it was like, oh, well, put Liger on first. And I was like, yeah, that could work. And I think everybody was just like, yeah, I think that could be quite cool. And then it was like, lights go down, and then boom, music hits, out he comes in the cape. And it was just, I proper pinched myself. Meeting Bret Hart was like that as well. And, just even that first show, or maybe actually the first time we ran the Newcastle Academy, because I would go to gigs there all the time as a teenager.
We all love that venue in Newcastle. It's like a beloved venue in Newcastle.
It's a big old bingo hall that was maybe once a theatre. It's got a massive balcony. It's your standard, Carling Academy as they were, or
Yeah.
two academies. But yeah, there's something different about going in through the side door, seeing how small and cramped backstage is compared to what you thought it would be, being on the stage, having the run of the venue for the day, and then finally being out there when I was initially on camera before I went back behind the speakers and hid with the computer live cut and stuff. Just being in that room with a room full of people just chanting and making noise and I don't think it'll ever leave me. It was that great. Noise and that experience.
I can only imagine. Go on, Jack.
I was just going to point out when Sam was like waxing lyrical there about the Japanese World Cup show. I missed that one. I was at a music festival, so I'm just listening to Sam tell all these crazy, what an experience it was, and I'm in a muddy field somewhere watching a band that I've never heard of. Probably.
I think one of the other weird pinch yourself ones was Minoru Suzuki, or when we had El Desperado over with him. Whenever Desperado would wrestle, Suzuki would watch his matches, and I'm usually sat on the gallery doing this, and just turn around and Suzuki would be like there, or other way around, Suzuki's wrestling and Desperado would be there. But Desperado would be wearing his mask the entire time. So he'd just be, behind me by about 5 feet. And then as the match is going on, and I'm just getting tunnel vision toward these little screens so I can see what's coming next with all my cameras and getting everything lined up. And I just sort of sit back, and he was just there. And it was like, what the fuck? He's just sat right next to me.
And if anyone listens doesn't know who Minoru Suzuki is, just go and Google him, because he's the scariest looking man you will ever see in your life.
He could kill you with his hands.
I think he could kill you with his look. If he stared at me from 6 feet under. If you said to me, Charlie, you've got to go and get in a ring with him, I'd be like, no, we're not doing that, lads. I'll be taking the count out straight away. I'll be going rogue. But yeah, I can't imagine what it was like being involved with that. Some awful experience, I'm sure, of stress and just madness, but also just some of the best. It must have been incredible. As I say, Jez, I could sit here and talk to you about wrestling all day, but I realise there are things everyone needs to do. So I'm going to move on to my favourite part of any of the podcasts I do. Now, it's a game I call Teammates, but what I do is normally have sports people on who are playing in a team, and I will ask them, who of your former teammates is most likely to do this or that, etc., etc. But how I'm going to work it with you boys is anyone currently at Cultaholic or you've worked with in the past at what culture or something like that, part of your team in that sense is the team I'm going down with this.
Right.
So my first question is coffee theme, because I know how much coffee I drink and know how much anyone who works in any office drinks of coffee. And of course, this podcast is powered by 92 Degrees Coffee, which we sent some to you, which I hope you got and enjoyed. I hope
it's delicious.
I hope that went down well.
I really want a coffee sponsorship myself, Charlie.
So yes, exactly. We will. Hey, I could see Cultaholic powered by 92 Degrees. I can see it now. I'll have a word. But no. So my question is, when someone in the office, if someone was going off to make themselves a delicious cup of 92 Degrees, who would be most likely to try and sneak off and do it by themselves and not offer to make one for anyone else? Jack, I'll come to. All right, Sam's put his hand up. Sam, what are you saying?
Go for it, Sam. Go on,
Sam.
Me.
It's you, Sam.
The amount of times I'll come out of the kitchen and I'll have a cup of coffee, and then I'll look across and I'm like, oh God, no, I should have really asked, and then sit down, and then somebody else stands up almost immediately and goes and makes a cup of coffee. I'm like, I
was gonna go for Adam Pacitti, but not because I'm basing this on his night out etiquette, which is not ideal, to be honest with you.
Okay, what's that?
Sorry to grass him up right now, Charlie.
About this now.
Back when we could socialize, Adam would he stays for like 1 or 2 if it's like a big night, and then he'll not even tell us that he's ordered the Uber, and then he's just out the door. He's like, "Oh, my Uber's here. See you later." And we're like, "What's happened there?"
Yeah.
And I just feel like
into a responsible adult.
He has, because he hasn't always been like that. I've seen him drunk in Pop World at 2 a.m. playing about with a wet floor sign. Yeah.
Lads, I can't tell you how much I want to be drunk in a Pop World at the moment. It's all I want. I've got. I'm going to interrupt. One of my best mates is a player for Harlequins called James Chisholm, and we were talking literally 2 days ago about how much we want. There's you won't have been. The Pop World in Guildford is unbelievable. Guildford, it has a Yates that has a dance floor in the bottom. It has a dance floor in the bottom, like a club in the bottom. So you go Yates and you finish in Pop World. And honestly, it's one of the best nights out I've ever been on this road. We didn't even mean to go on the night out. We went for one drink. I was up to go to London for something at 9 the next morning and got in at 3, and I was like, this has not been a good idea. But yeah, I can't wait to be in a pot world again. So
it's gonna be a heavy night, like for you lot, for the rugby lot. The second you're allowed back into any form of bar.
Mate, it's gonna be a heavy night for everyone.
Yeah.
We call leaving like that, like Pachiti was saying does there. We call it a smoke bomb. Rugby, so you just smoke bomb. But if you're gonna smoke bomb properly, you don't even tell anyone. You go and you just leave. A few times a night out, you'll be there. And I won't lie, in the past, I've been guilty of it myself once or twice. So I used to live with Tom Hudson. He hates nights out. And he'd be like, I'm going home and getting food. And the problem with me on a night out is as soon as food crosses my mind, I have food.
That's it.
So if he could, this is the most embarrassing I've ever said ever, but I'm going to say it live on the podcast. Once made it back on a Saturday night for Match of the Day. That was how early we smoked bombs. Yeah, that was. But we were so pissed that I woke up the next morning and put Match of the Day on. He was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I haven't seen it." He's like, "We watched it last night, you dickhead." I have no memory of watching it. Okay, my next question on this is: if you were on a night out and something went wrong, and you had one call to make someone at 3 a.m. to come and help you, who would be the first person you'd call, and who would be the last person you'd call?
Ooh.
I can see
Do you want me
real
to go
thought
first,
going
Sam?
into this
Do you
one.
want me to go first to give you a bit of time?
Go on then, Jack.
All right,
Go on.
I'll buy you some time. The first person I would call for help if I was in trouble on a night out would probably be. It's between two. It's either Andrew or Tom Campbell, because they're the two like nicest blokes in the office, probably. Probably Tom, because he's up at silly hours anyway, because he does our news coverage and he works some crazy hours. He used to be a radio DJ early on in the morning, so he's got a funny.
He's used to it. Yeah,
sleeping pattern. He's used to it. So I'd call Tom. I'd call Tom first. The last person I would call, probably Adam Pacitti again. To be honest.
I think you've just talked yourself completely out of my call there, because I was gonna choose you because we got a bit of backstory, we got a bit of history. We used to be.
Wait, you were going to choose me for the first person you called?
For the first person I'd call, but
you made
a very good point about Tom, and I know how sleepy you are. So
I do get sleepy sometimes.
Tom's the guy, but I think again probably would call Adam last because he works very hard. And I'd feel awful if I had to call Adam at 3 a.m. and be like, "I'm locked out of the office, mate."
Yeah.
Or I'm on the run. I'm wanted for murder. I didn't do it. He'd just hang up.
Yeah.
He'd be too tired. He'd just be like,
you know, you can almost understand it. You can almost understand it. My last one, I won't lie, lads. I'm really pleased with this question. So if you don't enjoy it, I will be upset. The pressure's on you now. So what I want to know is, like, if someone rings you up and says, "Lads, we've seen what you're doing at Cultaholic." It could be Vince, it could be Tony Khan, it could be anyone who runs any big wrestling pros. You can choose which one it was. And they said, "We want you and one other lad to come and straight in, fight for the tag team titles." Which titles? Yeah, there's the question. You're going after the tag team titles of any of the major wrestling companies. First of all, I want to know which titles you're going after, which ones you want the most. And second of all, I want to know who your first choice to be in there with you would be and why. But more importantly, I want to know who your last choice would be and why. Who you at least want to have in your corner.
Right. Well, we do have a couple of trained wrestlers in our company.
Yeah.
They were never. Yeah. So we've got Richard Tubman, who I shouted out earlier on. He used to be Ricky Jan. His gimmick was that he was Polish because he is half Polish, and it's brilliant. And then also there is he lives abroad now. He lives in the Czech Republic, but a lad we used to work with at What Culture, who's now a writer for us, Lewis the Dragon Beardsley. So Beardsley, because he claimed he was the nephew of Peter Beardsley, which made everyone cheer in Newcastle. He did. He knows Pac. He knows Neville. So
amazing.
There we go.
Amazing.
So it's one of those two. Probably Lewis, because he wrestled at a more extensive level than Ricky Ann did. And he's the Dragon. But for the last person, I don't want to pick him again. But I've got.
Are you going? Hang on, Jack. Are you looking to go 3 from 3 on Adam Pacitti here? For your 3 questions. Good.
Yeah. I'm going for Adam Pacitti again, actually, because I've seen him on a punching bag. Backstage at one of the venues we ran in Manchester. Shout out to the Bowlers Exhibition Centre. I feel like the layout of that building's just burned into my brain because we were there so often.
God, yeah.
But there was a little gym area, there was like a little MMA cage and all the punching bags and stuff. And I saw him on the punching bag, and I have to say that I wasn't too impressed. So unfortunately, I have gone 3 for 3 on Adam Pacitti. Okay. But my conscience is assured by the fact that he would also have picked me for all 3 negative options as well. Then. So there we go.
And just quickly, Jack. Which belts are you and the Dragon going after?
Me and the Dragon. We're probably going to have to go after the NXT tag team titles because Lewis is a bit of a flippy sort of work rate boy. And I think that's probably the only one he'd be satisfied with.
It sounds like Full Sail would just lap you up as well, that tag team. Yeah. I could see. Yeah. All right, Sam, over to you with the same question.
I'm not going to let Jack just sell Adam Pacitti short here. So trained to wrestle. He did a whole documentary about it called Pinfall, a wrestling documentary. But
Adam's just messaged me. Adam's just messaged me.
His ears are burning.
Forgot to check. Are you good to cover the Rumble on Sunday? Yes, I am. It's currently Friday night. It's currently Friday, and he's not. Got to check.
Also, I reckon, lads. If I was running a wrestling company that covered wrestling, I think probably the big 4. I'd get those dates up. I probably need to be free that Sunday night to cover that. I don't think you need to be checking in on that one.
You'd be amazed how much you're like, yeah, I'm going to sort all the dates this year. I'm going to buy a desk calendar. I'm going to put them all in. I'm going to put them in my phone. I'm going to set alerts. And then it'll be like, shit, it's the Rumble this weekend.
Yeah.
And it's like, where's it come from? And especially now that we've got like multiple pay-per-views per month. But in terms of my choices, I think Lewis is probably the safest shout.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could be the manager and step back, I'd put Lewis in there with Pacitti. But, I can at least be a bit of the Otis to Lewis.
Yeah, okay.
Much better, flippier Tucker. I've seen Lewis hit an arm drag. He's great.
Okay.
Lewis can do
street clothes off the ropes.
Lewis once scored a goal in 5-a-side and put his forehead on the ground and somersaulted back onto his legs. I was amazed. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that.
In terms of my least likely to tag with, I think I'm going to have to unfortunately throw Tom under the bus simply because he's so nice.
Right.
I think he's a good promo, but I don't think if it came down to it, if I needed somebody to quickly, sneakily pass me a chair or
he's not doing it
like that, I don't think Tom's going to do it. He's too nice.
So what belts are you and the Dragon going after?
Oh, SmackDown. We're not starting in developmental. We're going straight to the A show.
Straight. That's lovely. Get those blue belts.
Full Sail would not enjoy it.
Too smart for you boys. Right, lads, I've got 3 questions to finish off. 3 quick fire ones, and I will leave you to your evening because you give me far too much of your time. I really appreciate it.
No worries at all.
Don't worry.
The first one, don't even try and say to me, we haven't thought about it, because every wrestling fan ever has. So if you were a wrestler, what would your name be and what would your finisher be?
Well, it's got to be Jack the Jobber for me at this point, hasn't it, unfortunately? Yeah. And my finisher... Because when you're a kid, everyone's got their own finisher, right? Haven't they? That's semi-normal for a wrestling fan as a child. Mine was the J-bomb. The J-bomb was pretty cool. But for some reason, it wasn't a power bomb at all. It was a float over DDT.
Oh,
it's brilliant.
That's lovely.
Because I really liked the Rocks one, and then he'd nip up afterwards. And I was like, that's really cool. That's good.
Yeah.
We used to do Alabama Slam because we had a trampoline, and it was fun.
Yeah.
But I think if you actually did that to somebody in the garden, like if I'd done that to my brother on the grass, my mum would have probably really kicked off. But I'd probably go with my own name, to be honest, because the move's ready made for itself. My finish is literally a pile driver named Sam Driver.
Sam Driver,
so
Sam Driver.
You can't
just live in the entire gimmick. It's just me.
Yeah. What we're actually about to find out is Sam Driver isn't your name. You just saw in you like, I want to get into this niche of wrestling, and changed it then to like Driver. That's a you are called Joe Bloggs really, but you decided to change it there. Okay, my next one is, what's your favourite match ever? Everyone's got one. What's one that if you could only watch one more again, what would be the match you'd watch over and over again?
And mine would be probably CM Punk versus John Cena, Money in the Bank 2011. That was the match that I always say got me fully back into wrestling.
Yeah.
It used to be Austin Rock at WrestleMania 17. I'm struggling to pick between the two, but just because it was the match that I think got me back into it, I'll go for the more recent one. I'll go for Punk and Cena.
If it was like I've got to watch only this one thing forever, and I'm never, this is the only wrestling I can ever watch again, I'll probably pick something really smarky, like a Tiger Mask Dynamite Kid match or something. But if I'm going with the heart, it's either going to be TLC 2 or Bret Austin from WrestleMania, because the double turn in that match and the storytelling's done really well. There's, just the right amount of blood. There's just the right amount of aggression.
Just Austin refusing to quit. Just will not do it.
Until
Just
he
will
passes
not
out
do it.
and
Yeah.
just blood pouring down his face.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's iconic. It's iconic. And last one, I normally ask people what their favourite match they've ever played in is, but I want to know, what's your favourite moment? And you've had this whirlwind career that came out of nowhere. If you could go back and have a day or a moment again where you go, or bottle it up and have that feeling, what would you go back and do again?
I would choose the Newcastle show for WCPW, which was the last day of a 5-day tour where we'd gone like down the country and then back up again, and we were exhausted and we were knackered and stuff, and it was like we were coming back to. Well, we were literally coming back home. I don't know why I tried to make it a metaphor. We were coming back home.
A band finishing their tour in their homes.
Yeah, because the fans, I remember the fans that night in the Academy. Was it in the Academy, that return show? Or was it in
show,
Sports Central?
Sports Central. It was huge.
Right.
It was like 2,000 people, I think.
The fans were really, really up for it. It was a great night. And when you reach a point of tiredness where you sort of get delirious and everything's funny, it was like that. And then we went on a night out afterwards, and it was just brilliant night out as well. So I think that day, getting back to Newcastle, doing the show, running home, getting a shower, heading on the night out, and just having a great time. That's the one I'd go back to.
What about you, Sam?
That first Mania trip, before it quite got as insane as it was, because that was the first time where I think we all realized, like, Christ, like we're going to have to step up what we're doing. Like, people care about this and people are invested in this. And I think that's really when we got very serious about the content and how we would be presenting the content to these. But like, you don't want to do a shit job for them, because these people are out there and we've met them now and we've spoke to them. And I don't know, I think like there was something about that trip where it just felt like that was the moment the job clicked into a career. That was where it was like, okay, that's it now. This is what you do for the rest.
I always remember, Sam, there was a moment during that trip. We'd had a really stressful day. Things were just generally going wrong. Nothing unsalvageable, but we had to really graft hard to like.
We got screwed
make
out
it work.
of an entire location by Sirius XM, who just didn't leave. They were doing
it was our slot. It doesn't matter. Anyway,
we stood there with
I'm happy for this
Sam
podcast.
Still holds the ground.
I'm happy for this podcast to be a place where we just slam people who screwed us over. If you want to get into Sirius XFM or whatever they're called, Sam, the floor is yours. Just go at them, mate. Go at them.
I'm not going to burn too many bridges, because you never know. We may end up as a radio operation if radio all of a sudden becomes really cool again. But it was just something bewildering about us being there with these people we've never met, who are just as awkward as we are, in the sense of like, we're a new channel.
No, they were Americans. Viewers. They were cocky. No, they were cocky.
But we were sort of stood there just going
up
like,
themselves.
hello,
they were.
Can we talk to somebody about the? Okay, they're not leaving. All right, we'll just do it in a bus stop across the road. And we literally shot the video.
We did it. It was all right. We managed, but at the end of the tour, we got back to our hotel, and I remember me and Sam just like exhausted, and Ross as well. But it was just me and Sam in the room at the time, is what I mean. And basically, I remember saying to him like, "Oh man," and it was only like the second or third day of the week, and I was like, "I'm knackered. I just feel like I want to go home." And Sam said to me, "Look, the day after you get back to England, you want to be back here." And I was like, "You think?" And he was like, "Yeah." And Sam, you were totally 100% correct. I'll never forget that, because it was so true.
I think I remember watching that video in a bus stop and thinking at the time, like, why are they in a bus stop? This is weird. So I'm glad I now know, because I remember, I don't know if it was 32 or 33. One of my favorite things, thinking of weird places you did videos, was when Ross was King Ross, which was one of my favorite things for a long time. And John O'Clock, JBL, I'm blocked on Twitter by JBL, and I blame Ross Tweddle, because JBL tweeted something about Wayne Rooney converting the spot kick penalty free kick for whoever he was playing for at the time. And I tagged Ross and I said, "Ross, this needs to go in John O'Clock." And JBL blocked me from that moment. So I remember, I don't know if it was by design, but you found a castle in America. I just remember videos of Ross running around his castle.
That was medieval times.
Medieval times.
And cape, just the most excited man anyone's ever seen. I think that was when wrestling videos peaked. I was like, this fully grown man has fully embraced he's a king, and he's just living his best life doing it. And I was like, it's not going to get better than this.
That might have been our first ever outdoor shoot because it was for the NXT thing, I think, wasn't it? So
I couldn't tell you.
But I just remember Ross there in the crown and cape, and legit because it's just highway. That's all it is. It's just highway straight down the side of the road. The medieval times is literally in a lay-by, like when they sell strip malls and stuff. There's just this fucking massive medieval times, big plasticky Fisher Price castle, and just this row of Texas shops, and. He's just stood there and cars just going by tooting, just like, "Hey, King!" and just
not because they recognize him, just because, when you walk around in Grand Theft Auto and people heckle you as you walk around. It was like that. It was essentially that, yeah.
I think, thank God for American bus stops though, because it was pretty much the size of an auditorium.
Yes, yes. Lads, honestly, as I said, I could sit here and talk about videos you've done and memories and laugh all night long, but I will let you get on with it's a Friday night. The boys are very kind on a Friday night of all things. And, well, to be fair, there's not much we can go out for on Friday, so yeah. But from a personal point of view, lads, I always want to say huge thank you for coming on, but also just through the whole lockdown, everything you guys have carried on putting your stuff out. I know it can't be easy, and I know at times it's helped me get through some of the tougher times. I'd put a Cultaholic video on and watch and just let me zone out into the weird world of wrestling for half an hour. So a big thank you from me. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this will feel the same. For anyone who doesn't follow Cultaholic for any reason, where can they find you on socials and YouTube? How do they find you?
I am at Jack the Jobber on Twitter. Cultaholic's just at Cultaholic on Twitter. If you just search Cultaholic on YouTube, you'll find it. It's in the background. You can see how it's spelled there. Yeah. For any audio listeners,
Cultaholic Wrestling on Instagram as well.
Right. For any audio listeners, it's CULT AHOLIC. I forgot where I was in the word. That was really embarrassing. I had a proper look.
You could tell you do this a lot because normally I get to this point in the podcast. I say to people, "So where can they find you?" They go, "Where Jack's like, Jack Johnson, this here, this there." So, what about you, Sam? Where can everyone find you, mate?
I'm at Less Defined on Twitter, and once again, I'll just reiterate, obviously, at Cultaholic on Twitter, at Cultaholic Wrestling on Instagram, I believe. We have a sister channel. If you're not a fan of wrestling, you've got this far somehow. We have a sister channel called Triple Jump, who do gaming. They're just amazing. Just Ben and Peter were so funny, make such good content. They've got a great little team, so they're also well worth checking out. But yeah, just thanks for having us on, Charlie.
Oh, mate, lads,
I want to say, Charlie, you've been one of. I know everyone says it's really cool to be like, "Oh, I was there at the start and stuff." No, you literally were one of the first names that we remember regularly cropping up and tweeting us and stuff. And it's really awesome to finally be able to do this. Genuinely.
Oh, well, cheers, lads. Honestly, it's been my absolute pleasure. That shows what a loser and nerd I am, lads. I've been here since the start, and you won't get rid of me. If you want to follow the podcast, it's at Brew with Beckett on Instagram and Twitter. 92 Degrees are at 92degrees.coffee on Instagram, at 92degrees_ on Twitter. You can find them on Facebook, or you can go to www.92degrees.coffee. And if you want any coffee while you're there, lads, this is the exciting bit. BWB20 will get you 20% off. I almost forgot to plug it in the whole podcast, but I've managed at the end. Lads, it's been genuinely the best fun having you on this last hour or so. Thank you so much for coming. Hopefully, when the world is back to normal, we can get together for something stronger than a coffee at some point. We can get to a pop world together. That'd be a lot of fun. I really appreciate you boys coming on. I hope everyone listening has enjoyed it, and I will see you next week for another brew. Thanks very much, guys. Bye-bye.